The darkness of space had never seen anything like this before. 50,000 alien warships stretched across the void like a metal ocean, their hulls glowing with the deadly light of charged weapons. Ships from 12 different alien species had come together for one purpose: to destroy humanity once and for all. The Zephyrians brought their massive dreadnoughts, each one the size of a city block, bristling with plasma cannons that could melt through solid rock. The Krextari had assembled their bioships, living vessels that pulsed with organic energy and fired acid that could dissolve any known metal. The insectoid Vexkari contributed their swarm fighters, thousands of small ships that moved like angry hornets, while the crystalline Shardani deployed their geometric vessels that could split light itself into deadly beams. At the center of this terrifying armada floated the pride of the Zephyrian fleet, the command vessel Dominion. This monster of a ship stretched for 3 kilometers, its black hull covered in spikes and weapon arrays. Purple energy crackled along its surface as the ship's power core hummed with barely contained fury. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Vextar stood on his command platform, his 4 eyes glowing with satisfaction. He was massive even by Zephyrian standards, standing nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor plating covering his insectoid body. His mandibles clicked together as he watched the approaching human fleet through the main viewing screen. "Pathetic," he hissed, his voice like grinding metal. "The mighty humans send children to fight us." Around him, his bridge crew, a mix of different alien species, checked their instruments and prepared for what they expected to be the shortest war in galactic history. The Zephyrian weapons officer, a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a lobster, ran his claws over the firing controls with eager anticipation. "Admiral," the weapons officer chittered, "our sensors count exactly 200 human vessels. They appear to be destroyers and frigates, no capital ships detected." Vextar's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. 200 ships against 50,000. Either the humans have gone insane or they're more stupid than we thought. Far across the battlefield, the human fleet approached in perfect formation. Their ships were small by galactic standards. The largest was barely 400 meters long. They moved with quiet dignity through space, their gray hulls unmarked by the flashy decorations that alien species loved to paint on their vessels. The flagship of the human fleet was the EDS Defiance, a sleek destroyer that looked almost fragile compared to the alien monsters facing it, but appearances could be deceiving. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood with the calm confidence of a man who had seen too many battles to be impressed by big ships and loud threats. Park was in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of steady hands that came from years of command. His uniform was simple and practical, without the medals and decorations that alien commanders loved to display. Behind him, his bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. These were professionals who had trained for this moment their entire careers. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Kim So-ra from her position at the communications station. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The aliens are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're making quite a show of laughing at us." The sounds coming through the ship's speakers were like a zoo at feeding time. The Zephyrians clicked and hissed. The Krextari made deep rumbling sounds like distant thunder, and the insectoid species created a buzzing noise that made the human crew's skin crawl. Commander Lee Dong-min, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his displays with concern. He was a veteran of the Outer Colony Wars, and he'd seen what alien weapons could do. "Sir, they're charging their primary weapons. Sensors indicate they're targeting the third moon of Kepler 442b. Park nodded. Grimly, he knew what was coming. A demonstration of power meant to terrify humanity into surrender. Through the bridge's main view screen, he watched as the alien fleet's largest ships began to glow with deadly energy. The attack came without warning. A dozen massive energy beams lanced out from the alien dreadnoughts, converging on the small moon that orbited the system's main planet. The moon was roughly the same size as Earth's Luna, a ball of rock and ice that had circled its parent world for millions of years. It died in 3 seconds. The combined firepower of the alien fleet struck the moon's surface and simply erased it from existence. Where moments before there had been a celestial body, Now there was only expanding clouds of glowing gas and scattered debris. The destruction was so complete that even the moon's gravitational field disappeared, causing the tides on the planet below to shift immediately. The human bridge crew watched in silence. They had known intellectually that alien weapons were powerful, but seeing a moon deleted from reality was something else entirely. Lieutenant Kim So-ra's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her control console. The alien fleet's communications channels erupted in celebration. Victory roars, chittering laughter, and electronic squeals of joy filled the void as 50,000 alien warriors celebrated what they saw as their inevitable triumph. Admiral Vextar's voice cut through the chaos, his words transmitted directly to the human fleet. "Humans, you have just witnessed the power of the Galactic Alliance. That moon was destroyed by less than 1% of our total firepower. Surrender now, and we will grant you quick deaths. Refuse, and we will make your entire species suffer as we hunt down every last human in the galaxy." The bridge of the Defiance fell silent. Every eye turned to Admiral Park, waiting for his response. The weight of humanity's future rested on his shoulders, and everyone knew it. Park stepped forward to the communications console, his movement calm and deliberate. He looked out at the massive alien fleet, 50,000 ships armed with weapons that could crack planets, and felt no fear. Instead, he felt something that surprised him: pity. "This is Admiral Park Hyun-woo of the Earth Defense Force," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the void. "We have received your ultimatum and considered your terms." The alien chatter died down as they waited for humanity's surrender. "Our answer is no," Park continued. "If you want this system, you'll have to take it from us." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, the alien laughter began again, but this time it was different. This was not the confident amusement of predators playing with their prey. This was the desperate laughter of creatures who couldn't believe what they had just heard. "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "You saw what we did to that moon. We can do the same to every human world in the galaxy." "Perhaps," Park replied calmly, "but first you'll have to get past us." The alien commander's rage was visible even across the vast distance separating the fleets. "So be it, humans. You have chosen to die. We will grant your wish. The first..." Salvo from the alien fleet lit up space like a deadly fireworks show. Thousands of plasma bolts, energy beams, and exotic weapons fire streaked across the void toward the tiny human fleet. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts unleashed their signature purple death rays, while the Krextari bioships spat globs of corrosive acid that could eat through starship hulls in seconds. The crystalline Shardani vessels fired geometric beams of pure light that could slice a destroyer in half. Any sane military force would have been obliterated in the first 30 seconds. But something impossible happened instead. The human ships moved like they were dancing. Not the clumsy maneuvers of desperate pilots trying to avoid death, but the graceful, coordinated movements of performers who had practiced this routine 1,000 times. They slipped between plasma bolts that should have hit them, rolled away from energy beams with impossible timing, and somehow always seemed to be exactly where the alien weapons weren't firing. Captain Choi Min-ho gripped the command chair of his destroyer Incheon as 3 massive Krextari battleships converged on his position. Each of the alien vessels was over 1 kilometer long, their biohulls pulsing with veins of green energy. His ship was barely 300 meters from nose to tail, a minnow surrounded by sharks. "Captain!" shouted his weapons officer, Lieutenant Han Gi-jun. "They're bracketing us. We can't dodge all 3. The alien ships fired simultaneously. 6 streams of acid plasma erupted from their organic cannons, creating a web of destruction that would have trapped any normal vessel. The bridge crew of the Incheon held their breath, waiting for the inevitable. The plasma stream struck something and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But when the glare faded, the Incheon was still there, completely undamaged. Around the human destroyer, a faint blue shimmer revealed the presence of energy shields unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On the bridge of the lead Krextari battleship, Commander Thektos stared at his instruments in disbelief. The creature looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, with multiple tentacle arms manipulating his ship's controls. His beak-like mouth clicked in confusion as he ran the sensor readings again and again. "This is impossible," he gurgled, his translator rendering his bioacoustic speech into galactic standard. "Our acid plasma can dissolve neutronium. Nothing in the galaxy can stop it." His weapons officer, a smaller member of his species, waved several tentacles in distress. "Commander, the energy readings from that human ship don't match any known shielding technology. It's like they're using some kind of dimensional barrier. Across the battlefield, the human frigate Busan was putting on a show that would have made physics professors weep. Captain Yoon Ji-hee stood calmly on her bridge as her ship performed maneuvers that should have torn it apart under the stress. The Busan spun like a top, while somehow maintaining forward momentum, its weapons firing with pinpoint accuracy, even while the ship twisted through impossible angles. "Target the weak spots," Yoon ordered her tactical officer, Ensign Park Soo-jin. "These aliens build big, but they don't build smart." The Busan's weapons were different from the flashy energy cannons that alien species preferred. They fired small, dense projectiles at incredible speeds, kinetic penetrators that punched through armor like bullets through paper. But it wasn't just the weapons that made the difference. It was the targeting. Every shot from the Busan found a critical system: power conduits, weapon mounts, sensor arrays, engine exhausts. The human frigate carved up alien dreadnoughts with surgical precision while dancing between their return fire like a leaf in the wind. "Ma'am," reported Ensign Park from her tactical station, "the aliens are adapting their targeting computers. They're starting to predict our movement patterns." Captain Yoon's smile was cold as winter. "Good. Let them think they're getting smarter. Signal the fleet. Initiate Protocol Teguk." The change that came over the human fleet was like watching a school of fish suddenly move as one organism. The 200 human ships, which had been fighting as individual units, suddenly began moving in perfect coordination. They formed complex, geometric patterns that shifted and flowed like a living kaleidoscope. The alien targeting computers, which had been slowly adapting to human tactics, suddenly found themselves facing an impossible problem. The human ships weren't just moving unpredictably, they were moving in patterns that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Ships would disappear from one position and appear in another without seeming to cross the space in between. Energy readings spiked and vanished in ways that made no sense. Lieutenant Commander Rex Kali of the Vex Kari Swarm Fleet watched in growing horror as his fighter squadrons tried to engage the human vessels. The Vex Kari were masters of swarm tactics, using thousands of small ships to overwhelm larger opponents. But against the humans, their numerical advantage meant nothing. "They're not fighting like individuals," Rex Kali buzzed to his squadron leaders. "They're fighting like a single organism with 200 bodies." His fighters, which should have been able to swarm and destroy the smaller human ships, found themselves being systematically picked apart. The humans seemed to know where every Vex Kari fighter would be before the pilots themselves had decided. Human ships would suddenly appear behind alien formations, deliver devastating attacks, and then vanish back into the swirling patterns before return fire could reach them. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Vextar watched his overwhelming advantage slowly evaporate. His 4 eyes tracked the battle displays in disbelief as the casualty reports poured in. 300 alien ships destroyed, 500 more damaged, and the humans had lost only 12 vessels. "This is impossible," he roared, his mandibles clicking furiously. "We outnumber them 250 to 1. How are they winning?" His tactical officer, a nervous insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the bridge lights like broken mirrors, chittered anxiously as he consulted his instruments. "Admiral, I don't understand the readings we're getting from the human ships. Their power signatures are all wrong. They're using some kind of technology that doesn't appear in any of our databases." "I don't care what technology they're using," Vextar snapped. "Deploy the reserve fleets, all of them. I want every ship we have in this system to converge on those humans and crush them." The alien response was immediate and overwhelming. Reserve fleets that had been holding back at the edge of the system surged forward, adding another 20,000 ships to the battle. The void filled with so many alien vessels that they seemed to blot out the stars themselves. But something strange happened as the new alien forces joined the fight. Instead of pressing their attack, the human fleet suddenly changed tactics. The graceful, flowing patterns stopped. The impossible maneuvers ceased. Instead, the 200 human ships formed a tight sphere around their flagship, the Defiance. It looked like a defensive formation. It looked like the humans were finally admitting they were beaten and trying to make a last stand. The alien commanders began to smile, thinking they had finally forced the mysterious human fleet to show weakness. But on the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Park Hyun-woo was checking his chronometer with the satisfaction of a man whose carefully laid plans were proceeding exactly on schedule. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Kim Sora from the communication station, her voice tight with excitement, "long-range sensors are detecting something at the edge of the system. It's massive, sir." Commander Lee Dong-min looked up from his tactical display, his face pale. "Sir, whatever it is, it's causing gravitational distortions that our instruments can barely measure. The mass readings are off the charts." Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. Right on time. On the bridge of the Dominion, the Zephyrian sensor operator suddenly began making sounds of distress. His voice trembled as he reported to Admiral Vextar, "Sir, we're detecting a massive gravitational anomaly approaching from the outer system. The readings are... I've never seen anything like this." Vextar turned his 4 eyes toward the long-range displays. At the very edge of sensor range, something enormous was moving toward them through the darkness between the stars. Something so large that its gravity well was already affecting the orbits of the outer planets. "What is that thing?" he whispered. The answer would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. 3 hours. For 3 long hours, the human fleet had danced with death among the stars, their small ships weaving between the massive alien armada, like wolves dodging the swipes of sleeping giants. The space around Kepler 442 was filled with the debris of destroyed vessels, most of them alien, but the battle was far from over. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the tactical displays with the calm of a man who knew something his enemies did not. Around him, explosions painted the darkness in brilliant colors as plasma bolts and energy beams crisscrossed the void. His ship shuddered occasionally as alien weapons fire tested their shields, but Park never flinched. The bridge was a marvel of human engineering. Unlike the alien ships with their flashy decorations and intimidating designs, the Defiance was built for efficiency. Every surface was clean and functional, every station manned by officers who had trained for this moment their entire careers. The soft hum of the ship's systems provided a counterpoint to the chaos outside. Lieutenant Kim So-ra looked up from her communication station, her young face tight with concern. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Andromedan fleet. They're requesting permission to join the battle." Park raised an eyebrow slightly. The Andromedans were one of the few alien species that had remained neutral in the galaxy's conflicts, but they were known for their massive warships. Their planet-killer class vessels could crack worlds in half with their gravitational weapons. "Tell them their offer is appreciated, but denied," Park said calmly. "They are to maintain their current position and await further orders." Commander Lee Dong-min, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his displays with barely concealed frustration. The man was a veteran of a dozen smaller conflicts, and every instinct told him they needed help. "Sir, with all due respect, we could use those reinforcements. The aliens are bringing in their entire reserve fleet. We're looking at 70,000 ships now." Park turned to face his tactical officer, and for a moment the bridge fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Commander Lee, I need you to understand something very important. We are not the reinforcements in this battle. We are the bait." The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Officers turned from their stations to stare at their admiral, trying to process what he had just said. The bait? They had been fighting for their lives against impossible odds, and their admiral was telling them it was all part of a larger plan? Ensign Park Ji-won, the youngest officer on the bridge, spoke up with the confusion they all felt. "Sir, I don't understand. If we're the bait, then what's the trap? Before Park could answer, Lieutenant Kim So-ra's station erupted in activity. Warning lights flashed across her console as she struggled to process the incoming data. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the outer system. It's coming from beyond the heliopause, sir, way beyond." The heliopause was the boundary where the solar wind from Kepler 442 met the interstellar medium. It was the edge of the star system, billions of kilometers away. Nothing should have been able to transmit from that distance, at least not with the clarity they were receiving. Park's expression changed for the first time since the battle began. A smile, small but genuine, crossed his weathered features. "Put it through, Lieutenant, and route it to the main speakers." The voice that filled the bridge was speaking in Korean, but there was something different about it. It carried the authority of command, the weight of absolute confidence, and something else, the sound of a man who had spent years in the deep black between the stars. "Admiral Park Hyun-woo, this is Admiral Song Kang-dae of the Terran Imperial ship, Terra Invicta. We are in position. All alien subspace communications are now being jammed. The enemy fleet cannot call for reinforcements or coordinate retreats. You may begin Phase 2 of the operation." The effect on the alien fleet was immediate and terrifying. Across 70,000 ships, communication systems went dead. The Zephyrian command network, which had been coordinating the massive assault, simply vanished. The Krextari bioships, which communicated through quantum-entangled organisms, found their living communication arrays going silent one by one. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Vextar watched in growing horror as his carefully coordinated assault began to fall apart. His communications officer, a spider-like creature with 8 manipulator arms, frantically worked at his console. "Sir, all subspace communications are down. We can't reach the homeworld. We can't coordinate with the other fleets. We can't even talk to our own ships unless they're in visual range." Vextar's 4 eyes blazed with rage and fear. "That's impossible. Our communication systems are quantum encrypted and use fold space technology. Nothing in the galaxy can jam them." "Something is, sir," the communications officer chittered nervously. "The interference is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's not just jamming our signals, it's eating them." Back on the Defiance, Admiral Park stepped forward to address his crew. The bridge had gone completely silent, every officer hanging on his words. Outside, the battle continued, but inside this small space, the fate of humanity was being revealed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Park began, his voice carrying clearly through the bridge, "what you are about to witness is the culmination of 200 years of careful planning and preparation. From the moment humanity made first contact with galactic civilization, we have been studying, learning, and preparing for this day." He gestured toward the tactical displays, where the massive alien fleet was shown in all its terrifying glory. 70,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet, all focused on crushing humanity's tiny fleet. We studied every war, every battle, every tactical doctrine the galaxy had to offer. We learned from the mistakes of species that had been conquered, and we learned from the successes of those who had survived. Most importantly, we learned that in galactic warfare, size and numbers are not everything. Commander Lee Dongmin was beginning to understand. "Sir, are you saying that our fleet was never meant to win this battle?" "Exactly, Commander. Our job was never to defeat 70,000 ships. Our job was to keep them here, in this system, fighting us instead of scattered across the galaxy, where they could threaten Earth and the colonies. We needed them all in one place." Lieutenant Kim So-ra's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, the long-range sensors are detecting something massive approaching from the outer system. The gravitational readings they're impossible, sir." Park turned to face the main view screen where the starfield was beginning to show subtle distortions. Space itself seemed to be bending around something enormous moving toward them, from the darkness between the stars. "Not impossible, Lieutenant," Park said quietly. "Just bigger than anything the galaxy has ever imagined. The thing approaching from the outer system was not just a ship, it was a mobile fortress, a city in space, a weapon platform that had been built in the cold darkness, where no alien sensors could detect it. For 2 centuries, humanity had been preparing for this moment, building vessels in the void between stars, creating a fleet that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The alien fleet, trapped in the Kepler 442 system with their communications jammed and their coordination broken, was about to learn what happened when you underestimated the children of Earth. They had come expecting to crush a primitive species, but instead they had walked into a trap that had been 200 years in the making. The real battle was about to begin. It started with the light changing. The golden glow of Kepler 442, the system's star that had burned bright and steady for over 4 billion years, suddenly began to dim. Not the gradual fading of a dying star, but the sharp, immediate darkness that comes when something massive blocks the light. The 70,000 ships of the alien armada were locked in deadly combat with the human fleet when the shadow began to fall across the battlefield. At first, the alien commanders thought it was some kind of weapon. Perhaps the humans were using dark matter manipulation or gravity bombs. But as the darkness deepened, they realized something far more terrifying was happening. Commander Thektos of the Krextari biofleet was the first to understand what his sensors were telling him. The octopus-like alien had been alive for over 3 centuries, had fought in dozens of galactic wars, and had seen weapons that could shatter planets, but nothing had prepared him for this. "By the 7 moons of Krextar," he whispered, his bioacoustic voice trembling, as his forearms worked frantically at his organic control systems. "What in the name of the dark deep is that thing?" On his living displays, grown from modified coral that could process sensor data, the readings were impossible to believe. Something was moving between the star and the battlefield, something so massive that it was blocking out the light of an entire sun. The gravitational distortions were off the charts, causing his bioship's internal organs to quiver with stress. The thing emerging from behind Kepler 442 defied every concept of what a spacecraft should be. The human vessel, for it was clearly human, bearing the same clean, functional design as their smaller ships, was not just large. It was beyond large. It was a mobile world. The Tis Terra Invicta stretched 47 kilometers from its blunt, armored bow to its massive engine clusters. To put that in perspective, it was longer than the distance between some cities on Earth. You could have fit the entire alien command fleet inside its cargo bays and still had room left over. But size was only part of what made the Terra Invicta so terrifying. The hull was a patchwork of different armor types, some sections gleaming with fresh plating, others scarred and pitted from battles fought in the darkness between stars. Weapon ports dotted the surface like the pores on some massive skin, thousands of them, each one large enough to house the main gun of an alien dreadnought. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship Dominion, his 4 compound eyes reflecting the dim light from his instrument panels as he stared at the impossible sight before him. His mandibles clicked together in a nervous rhythm he hadn't displayed since he was a juvenile. That's larger than our entire home fleet combined," he breathed, his translator struggling to convey the mixture of awe and terror in his voice. "How is such a thing even possible?" His tactical officer, a nervous insectoid with twitching antennae, consulted his instruments with shaking claws. "Sir, the mass readings are beyond our sensors' ability to calculate accurately. Conservative estimates put it at somewhere around 200 million tons. That's the mass of a small moon." Around the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out on alien bridges across the armada. The Shardani crystal ships were resonating with harmonics of fear, their geometric hulls actually changing color as their crews struggled to process what they were seeing. The Vexkari swarm fighters were clustering together, like insects seeking safety in numbers, their usual aggressive formations breaking down into defensive huddles. The communications array of the Terra Invicta activated, and Admiral Song Kang Dae's voice rolled across the battlefield like thunder. But this wasn't the voice of some distant commander. The power behind the transmission was so strong that it came through clearly on every alien ship, cutting through their jamming attempts and emergency frequencies like a knife through tissue. "Attention alien fleets, I am Admiral Song Kang-dae of the Terran Imperial Navy. You are surrounded and outgunned. This is your only warning. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of your aggression against humanity." The response from the alien fleet was as predictable as it was futile. Admiral Vextar, His pride wounded and his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were showing him, gave the order that would doom thousands of his people. All ships concentrate fire on that abomination. Show these humans that the Galactic Alliance fears nothing. 3 Zephyrian dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer-long monument to destructive power, turned their main weapons toward the Terra Invicta. Their planet-cracker cannons charged with enough energy to level continents, purple fire racing along their hulls as they prepared to unleash hell. The attack was everything the Zephyrians could bring to bear. 3 beams of pure destruction, each one capable of boiling away oceans, struck the Terra Invicta's forward shield simultaneously. The energy discharge was visible from the outer planets of the system, a brilliant nova of light that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. When the glare faded and the electromagnetic interference cleared, the Terra Invicta hung in space exactly as it had before. Not a single scorch mark marred its hull. Its shields hadn't even flickered. "Impossible," Admiral Vextar whispered, his voice barely audible even to himself. "No ship can withstand that kind of firepower. We just hit it with enough energy to crack a planet." On the bridge of the Terra Invicta, Admiral Song Kangdai barely glanced at the tactical displays showing the alien attack. The bridge was vast, more like the command center of a space station than a ship. 800 officers worked at stations arranged in concentric circles around the command platform, each one a veteran of battles fought in the cold darkness. Between stars, Captain Nam Tae-hyun, Song's first officer, looked up from his tactical station with the calm of a man who had seen this scenario played out many times before. "Admiral, the alien fleet is attempting to scatter. Multiple ships are breaking formation and heading for the system's edge. Should we pursue?" Song shook his head slowly. "Negative, Captain. Signal the fleet to form containment formation, Delta 7. No one leaves this system without our permission." The word fleet sent a chill through every alien who heard the transmission. Fleet? As in there were more ships like this monster? The answer came as the Terra Invicta began to move. Despite its incredible size, the massive vessel accelerated, with a grace that seemed to mock the laws of physics. But more terrifying than its movement was what began to appear around it. From the outer system, from behind moons and asteroids, from the darkness of space itself, more human ships began to decloak. Not ships the size of the Terra Invicta, nothing could match that behemoth, but vessels that dwarfed the alien dreadnoughts. Dozens of them, each one bristling with weapons and bearing the scars of secret wars fought in the void. Along the Terra Invicta's massive hull, weapon ports began to open. Not the crude, flashy cannons that alien species favored, but precise, efficient instruments of destruction. Rail guns that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Particle beam arrays that could strip electrons from matter at the atomic level. Gravitational lenses that could focus a star's energy into beams of pure annihilation. But perhaps the most terrifying thing about the Terra Invicta wasn't its weapons or its size. It was its hull. Up close, the alien sensors could make out details that told a story of centuries of warfare. Battle damage that had been repaired with armor from a dozen different worlds. Weapon impacts that spoke of fights against enemies, using technologies the current galactic civilization had never seen. This wasn't humanity's first warship. This was humanity's oldest warship, a veteran of conflicts fought in the deep black between the stars, where no galactic government held sway, and the only law was survival. One of the Andromedan observers, Captain Zil-Ara, whose people had remained neutral in most galactic conflicts, whispered into her communication device, "How long have the humans been building ships like this? How long have they been preparing for war?" The answer would come later, when intelligence analysts sifted through the wreckage of the battle. For over 2 centuries, since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, they had been building ships in the darkness between stars. The Terra Invicta was just the first one they had allowed the galaxy to see. The real human fleet was about to reveal itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The universe seemed to hold its breath. In the growing shadow of the Terra Invicta, 70,000 alien warships floated like leaves scattered by a hurricane. The mighty armada that had gathered to exterminate humanity now looked like toys compared to the human mothership that dominated the battlefield. The silence was more terrifying than any weapon. For the first time in galactic history, an entire alien fleet had been rendered speechless by what they were seeing. Captains who had conquered star systems stared at their sensor readings in disbelief. Warriors who had never known fear felt their hands shake as they gripped their control stations. Admiral Song Kangde's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. His words reached every ship in the alien fleet, transmitted with such power that they bypassed damaged communication systems and emergency channels alike. "You came to this system believing you faced a primitive species," Song said, his voice carrying the weight of 2 centuries of preparation. "You were gravely mistaken. For 200 years since our species first learned we were not alone in the universe, humanity has been preparing for this day." On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Dominion, Admiral Vextar's 4 eyes were fixed on the impossible sight before him. His tactical displays showed the Terra Invicta in all its terrifying glory, but the numbers made no sense. How could anything that large even exist, let alone move through space? "While you fought your petty wars and divided the galaxy among yourselves," Song continued, "we watched. We studied every battle, every tactic, every weakness. We learned from the mistakes of conquered civilizations and the successes of survivors. Most importantly, we built our strength where you could never find it, in the darkness between the stars." The alien fleet commanders began to realize the scope of their miscalculation. This wasn't just about one large ship. This was about a civilization that had spent 2 centuries becoming the ultimate predator, while pretending to be prey. 3 Zephyrian battle groups, each containing over 50 dreadnoughts, suddenly broke formation and accelerated toward the edge of the system. Their commanders had decided that retreat was better than facing whatever the humans planned to do next. They never had a chance. The Terra Invicta's point defense systems activated with casual efficiency. Along the massive ship's hull, thousands of weapon ports opened like eyes awakening from sleep. Beams of coherent energy reached out across millions of kilometers, moving faster than the alien ships could react. The fleeing Zephyrian vessels found their engines disabled, their weapon systems offline, their life support systems intact but their ship's mobility completely destroyed. They drifted helplessly in space, neither destroyed nor allowed to escape. The demonstration was clear. The humans could have vaporized those ships instantly. Instead, they had chosen to show mercy while displaying absolute control over the battlefield. Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced before in his 3-century military career: complete and utter defeat. His voice trembled as he opened a communication channel to the human fleet. This is Admiral Vextar of the Galactic Alliance fleet," he said, his translator struggling to convey the mixture of fear and resignation in his words. "I formally request terms of surrender." Song's response was immediate and uncompromising. "Request denied, Admiral. You will surrender unconditionally or you will be destroyed. Those are your only options. You have 30 seconds to decide." Across the alien fleet, panic began to spread. Ship after ship began powering down their weapons, as captains realized they were facing an enemy that could destroy them all without effort. The mighty armada that had gathered to show humanity its place in the galaxy was surrendering to a force they had dismissed as insignificant just hours before. On the bridge of the human destroyer Incheon, Captain Choi Min-ho watched in amazement as alien vessels around him began to signal their surrender. His communications officer, Lieutenant Han Gi-jun, looked up from his station with wonder in his eyes. "Captain, we're receiving surrender signals from over 2,000 ships already. The Krextari biofleet is requesting permission to evacuate their crews to life pods." Choi opened a channel to Admiral Park on the Defiance. "Admiral, how should we handle the surrendering crews?" Park's response came immediately. "Take them aboard our ships, Captain. They'll be treated according to galactic law and return to their homeworlds unharmed. We're not conquerors, we're teachers." The process of accepting surrender took hours. One by one, the alien fleets powered down their weapons and prepared to be boarded by human inspection teams. The crews who had come to exterminate humanity now found themselves being treated with a courtesy and professionalism that many of their own governments would not have shown. As the last alien weapons went offline, Admiral Song Kangdae stood on the bridge of the Terra Invicta, looking out at the surrendered fleet through the massive viewports that lined his command center. His first officer, Captain Nam Tae-hyun, approached with a tablet containing the surrender documents. "Admiral, all alien fleets have formally surrendered. We have over 3 million prisoners aboard our ships. What are your orders?" Song took the tablet and scrolled through the numbers. 3 million alien warriors, representing 12 different species, all now under human protection. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but he had been preparing for this moment his entire career. "They will all be returned to their homeworlds," Song said firmly, "but they will carry a message with them. Humanity claims no territory beyond what we already hold. We demand no tribute, seek no revenge, and desire no conquest. But from this day forward, any threat against Earth or her colonies will be met with overwhelming force." He paused, looking out at the alien ships that were now preparing for their long journey home. "Tell them that humanity is no longer the galaxy's youngest species. We are now its guardians." The great evacuation began immediately. Human medical teams boarded alien vessels to treat the wounded. Human engineers helped repair damaged life support systems. Human diplomats worked with alien commanders to arrange safe passage home, but the most important cargo the alien ships carried was the message they would deliver to their governments. Humanity was no longer a species to be conquered or controlled. They were a force that could reshape the galaxy's balance of power with a single fleet. As the last alien vessel disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the stars return to their normal brightness as the Terra Invicta moved away from the system's sun. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim So-ra reported, "long-range sensors are detecting multiple human vessels decloaking throughout the system. It appears we have significant additional forces that were hidden during the battle." Park smiled for the second time that day. "The Terra Invicta was just the beginning, Lieutenant. For 2 centuries, we've been building ships in the darkness, between stars. Today the galaxy saw one of them. Tomorrow they'll learn there are hundreds more." Throughout the outer system, massive human vessels began to emerge from their hiding places. Dreadnoughts larger than alien space stations, carriers that could launch fighter wings the size of entire fleets, construction ships that could build, new vessels using nothing but asteroids and stellar energy. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. Earth's children had not just built a fleet, they had built an empire in the darkness, an invisible civilization that spanned the void between stars. As the human fleet regrouped and began its own journey home, signals went out across known space. The message was simple and would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity had taken its place not as a member of the galactic community, but as its protector. The age of humanity had begun, and the stars themselves would never be the same. The Fille. Antigua.